It was a warm August afternoon, and I was 9 years old out with my dad running errands in downtown St. John's. I loved to go shopping with him. He was patient, kind, and always made me laugh. I remember stopping at Woolworth's to get an apple pie, and then we went next door to the arcade to pick out some school supplies for my upcoming school year. I was going into grade 4 at St. Peter's Elementary School in Mount Pearl, and my dad bought me the jumbo pack of crayons with built-in sharpener and leads, along with a bright yellow, hard plastic Muppets lunchbox with thermos. I was so excited. My dad always believed in getting a treat after a busy day, so we went to our favorite place, Lars Convenience on the corner of New Gower and Adelaide Street, to get a custard cone. With ice cream in hand, we walked back along Water Street, and I asked if we could drive up to Signal Hill. He said, "Sure, let's go." We hopped back into the family two-door red K-car and drove with the windows rolled down. I could smell the salt air and hear the seagulls squawking in the St. John's Harbor. Soon, we were driving up Signal Hill Road, and my dad had to give the car some extra power by pressing down on the gas pedal to make it up the steep incline. I could see in the distance Cabot Tower perched on the highest point. But before we got there, my dad pulled the car over to the side of the road and said, "See that pond in front of us?" My eyes widened, and I was ready for whatever he would share next. He said that when he was a little boy, he was told that kids had fallen through the ice and drowned. Then he pointed to the hill close to it and told me that that is where criminals were hung and their bodies dumped into the pond. I sat there terrified as the custard cone melted into my hand. Then he became serious, lowered his voice, and warned me never to get too close to the water. I'm Nadine Bailey, and this is Haunted Canada. Join me in St. John's, Newfoundland, as I share the story of Deadman's Pond. Various Indigenous groups, including the Beothuk and Innu, have inhabited Newfoundland and Labrador long before any European explorers discovered the island. John Cabot is credited as the first European, but we now know that Lansom Meadows National Historic Site contains the excavated remains of a complete 11th century Viking settlement. This is the earliest evidence of Europeans, even though in 1497 Cabot landed on the island while sailing under a commission from King Henry VII. England then claimed the land and the sea surrounding it, which was rich in fish, especially cod. It was dried and salted, then shipped back to England on boats and sold to Spain and Portugal. By the mid-1800s, Newfoundland's population had grown to 120,000, and the primary sources of employment were fishing, seal hunting, shipbuilding, and forestry. Today, St. John's is the capital of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador and its largest city. It spans 172 square miles and is the most eastern one in North America. St. John's is a popular tourist destination, welcoming tens of thousands of visitors annually, and you can usually find them strolling along Water Street or on a boat tour through the Narrows to see whales and icebergs. Regardless, a must-stop destination in St. John's is Signal Hill. Located at the opening of St. John's Harbor at the highest point is Signal Hill. Today it is a National Historic Site because it once played a significant role in Canada's defenses and communication. It served as a strategic military vantage point from the 1640s to World War II, and played a crucial role in military signaling from 1704 to 1870. Cabot Tower was built between 1898 and 1900 to commemorate two important historical events: the 400th anniversary of John Cabot's voyage of discovery to Newfoundland and Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. The tower was designed and used as a flag signaling tower to communicate between ships and shore when radio communication was not available or preferred, continuing a tradition that started in 1704 and lasted until 1958. Signal Hill played an important part in history when, on December 12, 1901, Guglielmo Marconi received the first transatlantic wireless signal in the former military barracks. From 1933 to 1949, the Canadian Marconi Company operated a wireless station on the second floor of Cabot Tower. Today, venturing up to Signal Hill, exploring Cabot Tower, and the surrounding cliffs is where you'll find the most spectacular views of the Atlantic Ocean and downtown St. John's. It is almost a rite of passage for people who live in the city and visitors who come from away. And it is the backdrop for today's story. You can drive, bike, or walk up Signal Hill Road. However, the walk is not for the faint of heart. It's a steep incline of approximately 135 meters, 443 feet, with some relief along the way as you pass by many historic and colorful houses, each more vibrant than the last. On the right side is the Battery, where houses are built along the cliffside and at the ocean's edge. A bit further up the hill, you'll find the Johnson's Geo Center on the left. As you can guess by the name, the museum showcases local geology with hands-on exhibits, including one about icebergs and the Titanic. There are 8 loop trails in the Johnson's Geo Park with informative outdoor displays. Stoneworks and panels explain the local geological formations, botanical species, and traditional uses of stone. Completed in 2007, the park surrounds the Geo Center and includes a large pond that many people pass without a second thought. And across the road is Deadman's Pond, that for over 200 years, as legend says, it is bottomless. Deadman's Pond gets its name from its connection to Gibbet Hill, which overlooks it on the eastern edge. The hill gets its name from a wooden scaffold called a gibbet, which was built to display the corpses of executed criminals. Gibbeting was an accepted practice in Europe, and in the 18th and early 19th century, it was done in Newfoundland too. It was reserved for the worst criminals and was believed to be a fate worse than death, because after murderers, pirates, and other hardened criminals were hanged, they were placed in the gibbet as a public warning. The people of St. John's and any ships entering the harbor could see the hill, and the dead prisoners were often left hanging for days, weeks, and even months as the corpses rotted in place. The body would eventually be cut down and placed in a barrel with rocks, then rolled down the hill and dropped into the pond where it was believed to be bottomless. Many believed this would hasten the criminal's descent into hell. For as long as anyone can remember, Deadman's Pond has been surrounded in tragedy. One of the oldest stories is that of an Indigenous leader who either drowned in the pond accidentally or was murdered by his people and tossed into the murky waters. Many believe that the man's spirit is still wandering the pond. He's seeking revenge on those responsible for his death and the many drownings that have occurred in the pond. Because I should note, people swim in that pond. And some have reported seeing a hand grabbing hold of swimmers, pulling them below the water's surface as they struggle for air. Others have reported that as they walked the path around the pond, they saw a hand reaching out from the water, trying to grab hold of anyone walking too close to the edge to pull them under to their death. One of the most well-known stories surrounding Deadman's Pond was told to me as a child. It happened on Boxing Day, December 26, 1869. Frederick John West Carter Jr., or Fred as he was known, was a young attorney living in St. John's. Fred was born on Saturday, December 5, 1846, in Ferryland, Newfoundland, to Frederick Sr. and Eliza Bailey. He was the oldest of 10 brothers and sisters and was part of a prominent family. He bore his father, Frederick's name. Sir Frederick Bowker Tarrington Carter was a well-known lawyer then, and today he is considered one of the fathers of Confederation. In 1855, Frederick Sr. was elected to the House of Assembly as a Conservative and served as Speaker from 1861 to 1865. He became Premier of the province twice, once in 1865 and again from 1874 to 1878, and went on to become Attorney General. At the time, Newfoundland was under British rule and was formally recognized as a Crown colony in 1825, was granted representative government in 1832, and responsible government in 1854. But by the time Frederick Sr. was in power, that was the first time Newfoundland had sent 2 delegates to the Quebec Conference in 1864, which resulted in Canadian Confederation. However, joining was not popular in Newfoundland, and it continued to be unpopular when Newfoundlanders rejected Confederation with Canada in the 1869 general election. Sir John Thompson, Prime Minister of Canada, came very close to negotiating Newfoundland's entry into Confederation in 1892, but also failed, and the territory did not become a Canadian province until March 31st, 1949. So as his father navigated the first steps into Confederation, Frederick Jr. would soon follow him by becoming a barrister. It was Christmas 1869, and Frederick would be spending time in St. John's with his many siblings at the family home on Military Road. The house was in a prominent area where many lawyers, politicians, and merchants lived, close to Government House and Colonial House, home to the Newfoundland and Labrador Legislative Assembly. On Sunday, December 26, 1869, 23-year-old Fred Carter was attending a family gathering at his parents' home. At the same time, 2 young girls, Bruin and Martin, had decided to go ice skating on Deadman's Pond. It was Boxing Day, and the girls were filled with joy as they made their way through the snow up Signal Hill. When they got there, they sat on a rock and put their skates on. I'm sure the 2 girls would have been laughing and giggling, enjoying their time on the ice. At the same time, Fred had just finished eating dinner. He, along with 2 women who were friends of the family, left to go for a walk up Signal Hill Road. The snow crunched beneath their feet as a drumline to their conversation. Suddenly, that rhythm was disturbed by the sounds of screams. Fred immediately ran towards the cries for help. He reached the pond to discover that Bruin and Martin had fallen through the ice. The girls had been skating and didn't notice the pond was only half frozen, and now they were being weighed down by their wool coats and skates as they tried to keep their heads above water. With no thought for himself or his safety, Fred dove into the freezing water to save them. He reached one of the girls, but as he tried to push her onto the ice, it broke and they all slipped beneath the water. They were never seen alive again because sadly, all 3 of them drowned. Fred's family was devastated by the loss of their eldest son. His funeral took place on a cold and stormy day and was well attended, with crowds lining the snowy streets. He was buried at the Anglican Cemetery on Forest Road, and at the gravesite there was a firing party of volunteers and a band that played Deadman, along with family, friends, Governor Hill, the Law Society, and other citizens, all wanting to pay their respects. A monument was erected in front of Government House on Military Road, close to where the family lived. It is a tall and narrow stone obelisk on a square base, with 3 square stones, one on top of another, supporting the main structure. It is surrounded by a black wrought iron fence with numerous mature trees, and the inscription reads, "Erected in memory of Fred Weston Carter, age 23 years, barrister, eldest son of the Attorney General at the time, who lost his life on 26 December 1869 in the gallant but unsuccessful endeavor to save from drowning 2 girls named Bruin and Martin, who had fallen through the ice on Deadman's Pond, Signal Hill Road." Ever since that Boxing Day in 1869, people have reported hearing the sounds of girls screaming, echoing in the night, especially around Christmas time, while others have reported seeing the ghosts of Fred Carter and the 2 girls in and around the pond. Sometimes they appear to be soaking wet and staring at passers-by. Their tragic story has been passed down through the generations, but many are still unaware it could be their ghosts they're reporting when they say they see 3 people splashing around in the pond. What makes this sighting odd is that there was no sound, and then as quickly as they are seen, the 3 appearances disappear beneath the surface. In 2018, Janine, a writer and podcaster of Haunt Heads, shared some of her father's strange encounters. She wrote that one evening her father was performing his duties as a security guard on Signal Hill. He was walking towards the tower along the road when he noticed movement near Deadman's Pond. He saw small figures floating along the surface of the pond. It was dark, but it seemed as if these 2 figures were a light source for themselves. They moved out of the water, oblivious, and then faded away into the darkness. It's not the only story she shared. On another occasion, a friend was standing near the water's edge, looking into Deadman's Pond, when he suddenly saw bodies swinging by the neck from Gibbet Hill. Janine had been compiling these stories, and she wasn't surprised when a friend of her father's told her that one night he was walking around Deadman's Pond when he heard, and I quote, "I came upon 2 men dressed in period clothing throwing remains into Deadman's Pond from a pile to the left." Distressed by what he saw, he called out to the 2 men and told them to stop what they were doing. The 2 apparitions did not stop. They just looked at him and then faded away. The man went to the spot where they were standing, but he could not find any evidence of them being there, even though it had rained the night before and the ground was quite soggy. If you make the trek up Signal Hill Road, make sure you're aware that not everyone you encounter is from this century. From the spirits of criminals that were hanged on Gibbet Hill, to the spirits of Frederick Carter and the 2 girls who tragically drowned on Boxing Day in 1869, the ghosts and legends surrounding Deadman's Pond are endless. So if you're ever near Signal Hill, stop and pay your respects to those spirits still residing in the murky and bottomless waters of Deadman's Pond. And just to be safe, make sure to keep a good distance from the water's edge. We wouldn't want anything to pull you in. Thank you for joining me as we explore the stories surrounding Deadman's Pond in St. John's, Newfoundland. The Edmonton Ghost Tours sponsors Haunted Canada. I will link it in the show notes. Haunted Canada is written and produced by me, Nadine Bailey, with senior producer, Dila Velasquez. Production and sound design is by Rob Johnson, with help from Rosin Kufer. If you would like to support this podcast, please share and follow. We would also appreciate a like and a 5-star written review. Also, you can follow me on our different social media platforms, or if you have a ghost story, haunting, or true crime that you would like for us to cover on this podcast, please email me through the website hauntedcanada.com. Thank you from all of us at Haunted Canada and Curious Cast. Have a good night, everyone, and stay haunted.